For 10,000 years, they ruled the stars. They burned worlds. They crushed armies. They swept across the galaxy like a storm that never stopped. The ancient dragon conclave had conquered over 300 civilizations. Some of those civilizations had weapons that could crack moons. Some had armies that numbered in the billions. None of them survived. The dragons didn't even consider them challenge. So when their great star maps finally pointed toward a small blue planet at the edge of a quiet solar system, nobody expected anything interesting to happen. The planet was called Earth, and the creatures living on it, humans, had been officially classified as the weakest species in the known galaxy. No space travel, no psychic ability, no natural armor, no venom, no claws, no fire. Just soft bodies, short lives, and a strange habit of forming emotional attachments to other creatures. The dragons laughed when they read the report. They weren't even going to send warriors. They were going to send observers, just to make the conquest official. But what those observers found on that quiet blue planet didn't just surprise them. It stopped them cold. It made the most powerful creatures in the galaxy question everything they had ever believed about strength, power, and what it truly meant to survive. 3 things happened on that mission that nobody in the conclave had ever seen before. 3 things that even the eldest dragons couldn't explain. And by the time they finally understood what they were seeing, it was already too late. The dragons had already lost. Not the battle. Something far more important than that. Let me show you exactly how this happened. The Dragon Conclave had a simple rule. Find the weak. Take what you need. Move on. It had worked for 10,000 years. The Conclave was not cruel, at least, not by their own understanding. They believed the galaxy had a natural order. Strong species rose. Weak species served. That was simply how things worked. There was no malice in it. No hatred. Just efficiency. Their home world, Dracorith, was a world of fire and ancient stone. Mountains that touched the clouds. Oceans of molten rock. The dragons who lived there were enormous, some as long as a warship, with scales harder than any metal in the known universe. Their fire could melt steel in seconds. Their wings could carry them through the vacuum of space. They had been the dominant species in the galaxy since before most civilizations even developed language. They kept records, careful, detailed records of every species they had ever encountered. They cataloged everything: size, intelligence, military capability, biological defenses, resource value. Every species in the known galaxy had a file in the Conclave's great library. Earth's file was the thinnest file in the entire collection. The planet had been discovered 400 years ago by a lone dragon scout named Vorath. He had passed by the solar system on a routine mapping mission, noticed the small blue world, and made a quick assessment. Dominant species, bipedal mammals. Estimated average height, 1.7 meters. Lifespan, roughly 80 years. No natural weapons of significance. No biological defenses beyond basic immune response. No evidence of space travel. No psychic capability. Technology level, primitive. Vorath had filed his report, noted the planet as a future low-priority acquisition, and moved on. 400 years later, the Conclave finally turned its attention back to Earth. The reason was simple. The Conclave needed water. A drought on 3 of their colony worlds had created a resource shortage, and Earth's vast oceans made it an obvious solution. The plan was straightforward. Send a small observation team. Confirm the current state of the planet. Assess any changes in the dominant species. Then send the harvest fleet. The observation team was led by Commander Scale. She was young by dragon standards, only 300 years old, with dark red scales and sharp golden eyes. She had led 17 previous observation missions. All of them had been simple, efficient, unremarkable. She expected this one to be the same. Her team consisted of 4 dragons. Scale herself. Her second, a gray-scaled male named Dorath. A scientist named Lyris, whose specialty was biological analysis. And a young cartographer named Vex, barely 60 years old, on his very first mission. They arrived at Earth's solar system and cloaked their ship in the upper atmosphere. They began their observation. The first thing Scale noticed was how busy the planet was. 400 years ago, Vorath's report had described scattered settlements and primitive roads. What she saw now was different. The humans had built enormous structures. Their roads stretched across entire continents. Their machines moved through the air, across the water, and apparently even into the upper atmosphere. She noted the developments with mild interest. Progress, yes, but still nothing that concerned her. Dorath ran the numbers. Estimated human population, 8 billion. Military capability, present but primitive by galactic standards. Their weapons were chemical and explosive, effective against other humans. Perhaps, but nothing that could threaten a dragon's scales. Still no threat. Still no concern. She was about to issue the standard assessment, planet suitable for resource extraction, dominant species incapable of meaningful resistance, when young Vex called out from his station at the observation window. "Commander," he said slowly, his voice carrying an odd tone she hadn't heard from him before. "There's something happening on the surface. You might want to see this." Scale walked to the window. She looked down at the planet below. And for the first time in 300 years of life, she had no idea what she was looking at. A week before the Dragon observation team arrived in orbit, something had gone wrong far above the planet. A small conclave cargo transport, carrying 6 Dragon hatchlings being relocated between stations, had experienced engine failure while passing through the solar system. The pilot had managed to get the hatchlings into emergency, escape pods before the ship was lost. 5 pods had landed in the ocean. One had landed in a dense forest in the northern part of a continent the humans called Canada. That single pod had carried 2 hatchlings. Both were alive. Both were unhurt. And both had been found by a human named Daniel. He was 34 years old. He lived alone in a small cabin at the edge of the forest. He worked as a wildlife biologist, a person who studied animals and helped protect them. It was the kind of job that required patience, stillness, and the ability to make creatures feel safe. Daniel had been walking his usual trail that morning when he heard a strange sound coming from a nearby clearing. Something between a whistle and a chirp. Urgent. Repeated. He followed the sound. What he found was something he had never seen before. 2 small creatures, each about the size of a large cat, with pale silvery scales, small folded wings, and bright teal eyes. They were huddled together beside a crumpled piece of metallic material he didn't recognize. One of them had a small cut on its left wing. Both were trembling. Daniel didn't run. He didn't reach for a weapon. He didn't pull out his phone. He crouched down low, about 3 meters away, and waited. He watched them. They watched him. He spoke softly. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The hatchlings didn't understand the words, but they understood the tone. They understood the stillness of his body. They understood that he had made himself small and threatening in a way that no predator would ever do. After 20 minutes, one of the hatchlings took a step toward him. Daniel held his breath. He kept his hands open and low, palms upward. The hatchling sniffed his fingers. Then it pressed its small, warm nose against his hand and made a sound like a quiet bell. By the time Commander Scale looked down from the observation deck, Daniel was back at his cabin. He had the injured hatchling on his kitchen table, carefully cleaning the small cut with clean water and gently wrapping it in soft cloth. The second hatchling sat on his shoulder, watching with great interest. Scale stared. Dorath stared. Even Lyris, the scientist who prided herself on remaining calm in all situations, stared. "What is it doing?" Vex asked quietly. Nobody answered him immediately. On the surface, Daniel finished wrapping the small wing. He stroked the hatchling's head gently with one finger. The creature leaned into his hand. Its pale scales had stopped trembling. The fear was completely gone. Daniel got up, opened a cabinet, and came back with a small piece of cooked meat. He held it flat on his palm and offered it without pushing. The hatchling sniffed it, then ate it. The second one chirped from his shoulder, and he laughed a warm, open sound and gave it a piece too. He gave them names. He called the injured one Silver. He called the climber Ember. "It found them," Lyris said finally. Her voice was strange. "Careful. It found our hatchlings and it's caring for them." Scale said nothing. She was running every piece of data she had about human behavior through her mind. The biology reports, the threat assessments, the behavioral profiles. None of them had mentioned this. Why, Dorath asked. It was the right question. It was the only question that mattered. And not one of them had any answer at all. Scale ordered a full observation hold. No contact. No intervention. Just watch. That was standard protocol when something unexpected happened on a mission. You stopped. You observed. You gathered data before you made any moves. But this situation was testing her patience with that rule in a way nothing ever had. Over the next 3 days, she and her team watched Daniel. He built a small area in his cabin specifically for the 2 hatchlings. He gathered dry grass and soft materials and arranged them into something warm and enclosed, not unlike a nest, though he clearly didn't know that's what it was. He adjusted the temperature in his home. He searched on his small glowing device, scrolling through image after image, trying to understand what he had found. He found nothing useful. Of course, no human database had any record of dragon hatchlings. But that didn't stop him. He kept trying. When Silver woke in the night and made distressed sounds, Daniel got out of bed and sat with her until she calmed down. He didn't complain. He didn't hesitate. He simply got up and went to her. When Ember got herself stuck between 2 wooden beams near the ceiling, Daniel found a ladder, gently extracted the small creature, taking care not to bend her wings, then sat on the floor for an hour while Ember climbed on him instead. Lyris, who had spent decades studying the biological behaviors of dozens of species, had never seen anything quite like it. The human is displaying protective bonding behavior, she told Scale on the second night. But the remarkable part is that there is no evolutionary logic to it. These hatchlings offer him nothing. They cannot protect him. They cannot feed him. They are not native to his planet. By every measurable standard, caring for them serves no purpose for his survival. And yet he does it, Scale said. And yet he does it, Lyris confirmed. On the surface below, Daniel had fallen asleep in his chair. Silver was curled on his chest, rising and falling with each breath. Ember was tucked under his arm, one small wing spread out like a tiny blanket. Both hatchlings were deeply asleep, completely at peace. Scale watched this for a long time without speaking. Then young Vex said something that none of them would forget. "They're not afraid of him," he said quietly. "They should be. They're small and alone on a strange world, and a completely unknown creature found them. And they're not afraid at all," he paused. "How does he do that?" None of them answered, but the question stayed in the air of the ship for the rest of the night. Meanwhile, other things were happening that Scale didn't know about yet. Because Daniel wasn't the only human who had found something unusual. In a small coastal town in a country called Scotland, a fisherman named Robbie had pulled up a fishing net to find 3 more hatchlings tangled inside. They had been struggling for hours. He spent 40 minutes carefully cutting away every strand of net from around their wings and legs, one careful cut at a time, talking to them the whole while in a soft, steady voice before setting them gently into a bucket of seawater to recover. He was now sitting on the dock, watching over them, drinking tea from a battered flask, completely unbothered by the fact that he was babysitting 3 creatures that no scientist on Earth had ever classified. In a city in the American state of Montana, a teenage girl named Maya had found a single hatchling shivering on her apartment balcony. She had wrapped it in her warmest sweater. 3 separate humans, 3 separate countries, 3 completely independent events. And in every single case, the reaction had been exactly the same. Not fear, not aggression, not flight, just care. Commander Scale called a team meeting. She stood at the center of the scout ship's small briefing area and looked at her 3 crew members. They all had the same expression, the same quiet confusion that she herself was feeling. "I need assessments," she said. Dorath went first. "Threat level remains 0. The humans have no knowledge of our presence. They have not attempted to weaponize the hatchlings. They have not alerted any governing authority. As far as we can determine, they are treating this as a private, personal situation." Lyris went next. "I've been running comparative behavioral analysis all night. I've looked at every species in the database that shows protective instincts toward N-related young. Birds, mammals, a few insect varieties. But the human behavior doesn't fully fit any of those models." She hesitated. "It's more than protection. There's something else happening. Something I don't have a category for." Scale looked at Vex. The young cartographer shifted uncomfortably. "I'm just a map maker," he said. "But I've been watching them all night. All 3 locations." He pulled up the observation feeds. Daniel sleeping with Silver and Ember. Robbie on the dock with his 3 hatchlings, now recovered and playing around his boots while he laughed. Maya in Montana, cross-legged on her bed, the hatchling curled in her lap while she read to it from a small book. Reading to it. "They're not doing any of this for a reason," Vex said. "They don't know what these creatures are or where they came from. They have no idea we exist. They're just doing it," he paused. "Because that's what they do." Scale turned back to the screen and studied the 3 separate feeds. She thought about everything she knew about conquest, about power, about the 1,000-year history of the Conclave, and the hundreds of civilizations they had swept aside like dust. Every species she had ever studied had operated on the same basic principle. Resources were finite. Survival required strength. You protected your own kind, and you were indifferent to everyone else. That was the natural law of the galaxy. That was why the Conclave had always won. She had never once questioned that natural law. But what she was watching right now didn't fit it. These humans, 3 completely ordinary individuals in different countries, had found creatures that were completely alien to them. Strange, unknown, potentially dangerous, certainly useless in any practical sense. And every single one of them had, without hesitation, without any reason, without any expectation of reward, simply decided to take care of them. She thought about the Conclave's classification of Earth, weakest species in the known galaxy. She had accepted that classification without question when she left on this mission. Now, for the first time, she found herself wondering if the Conclave had been measuring the wrong things. She was still thinking about this when an alert sounded on the navigation panel. Dorath moved quickly to check it. He turned back to Scale with an expression she rarely saw on his face. "Concern." "Commander," he said, "we have a problem." He pulled up the long-range scanner results. A large conclave vessel had just entered the outer edge of the solar system. Not a scout ship. Not an observation team. A harvest fleet. They had arrived early. Scale felt something cold move through her chest. The harvest fleet's mission was simple. Move to Earth. Begin extraction of water resources. Handle the dominant species with standard suppression protocol, meaning they would make it very clear. Very fast. That resistance was both pointless and expensive. They had done it over 300 times. They were efficient. They were thorough. And they had no idea what was sleeping on that planet right now. Scale moved fast. She opened a direct communication channel to the Harvest Fleet's lead vessel, the Crimson Tide, commanded by Fleet Commander Roth. He was large even by Dragon standards, with deep burgundy scales and the kind of flat, direct gaze that told you he had not come to this planet to discuss things. Roth, she said when his face appeared on her screen. There is a complication. I need you to hold position while I complete my assessment. My orders are to begin extraction operations upon arrival, he said. I know your orders. I'm asking you to wait. 24 hours. A long silence. You have 12 hours, Roth said. The screen went dark. 12 hours. Scale turned back to her team. We need to retrieve the hatchlings. Now. And then she stopped. Because Vex had his face pressed against the observation window, staring at the surface below with an expression she had never seen on him before. Commander, he said softly, come and look. She moved to the window. On the surface, Daniel had taken Silver and Ember outside. It was early morning. He had brought them out wrapped in a blanket and set them gently in the grass at the edge of the trees. He sat beside them, cross-legged, drinking from a small cup. Silver was trying to fly. The wing wasn't fully healed yet, still wrapped in Daniel's cloth bandage. But Silver was trying anyway. Small, determined flaps, lifting a few centimeters off the grass, then falling back, over and over. Daniel watched every attempt. He didn't interfere. He didn't try to stop her or hold her back. He just watched, and every time Silver fell back to the grass, he said something soft and waited. On the 5th attempt, Silver got 3 full wing beats in before landing. Daniel made a bright, happy sound and put his hand out. Silver walked directly onto his palm, stretched her neck up, and pressed her small head against his cheek. In the ship above, nobody spoke. Scale realized, with a strange and completely unfamiliar feeling, that she was looking at something she had never witnessed in 300 years of life. She was looking at trust. Not the kind of trust that comes from power or fear or necessity. Not the kind that species gave the conclave because they had no other choice. The pure kind. The kind that had no reason behind it except feeling. Silver trusted Daniel. Not because he was strong. Not because he was large. Not because he had proven his dominance. She trusted him because he had been gentle when he had every option not to be. Scale had conquered 30 planets in her career. She had stood in front of hundreds of different species. She had never once felt what she was feeling right now. She pressed the communication channel for the Harvest Fleet again. My assessment is not complete, she said before Roth could speak. I need you to hold position. Scale. There are conclave hatchlings on the surface, she said. 6 of them. Survivors from the cargo transport lost last week. They are currently under the care of the planet's dominant species. Silence. I'm going to the surface, Scale said. Alone. No weapons. Another silence. Longer this time. You're going to the surface of an uncontacted planet, Roth said slowly, with no weapons, to retrieve hatchlings from the weakest species in the galaxy. Yes, Scale said. Why not just take them? Scale looked one more time at the small silver dragon pressed against the human's cheek. At the absolute stillness and peace of that moment. At the look on Daniel's face, not wonder, not fear, not calculation. Just warmth. Simple, uncomplicated warmth. Scale descended in a small personal transport. No weapons, no armors, no conclave insignia. She landed in the clearing near Daniel's cabin just after dawn. He was already outside. He had heard the transport. He was standing at the edge of the clearing, silver on his shoulder, ember at his feet. His eyes were wide. His body was still. He wasn't running. He wasn't reaching for anything. He was just standing there, looking at her. Scale stepped out of the transport. She was enormous compared to him, twice his height, with dark red scales that caught the morning light, and eyes that had seen 1,000 years of galactic history. She was one of the most powerful beings in the known universe. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked down at Silver on his shoulder, then back at Scale. And he said, very quietly, "Are these yours?" Scale stared at him. "Are they yours?" he said again. "I didn't know where they came from. I found them in the forest. I've been trying to take care of them. But if they are yours," he reached up carefully and moved Silver from his shoulder to his outstretched arm, holding her gently toward Scale. "Then I want you to have her back. She needs to be with her family." Scale did not move for several seconds. Silver looked at Scale, then looked back at Daniel, then made a soft sound and pressed her head against Daniel's hand one more time. Scale had commanded fleets. She had negotiated the surrender of civilizations. She had stood in front of species that could alter gravity, and she had not flinched. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was not entirely steady. "You found them injured and alone," she said. "You had no reason to help them." "They needed help," Daniel said simply, as if this explained everything. Because to him, it did. Scale was quiet for a long time. Then she did something she had never done in 300 years of life, and something no conclave commander had done in recorded history. She sat down on the ground. Right there in the clearing. In the grass. She folded her great wings and she sat. And she looked at this small, soft, short-lived human who had wrapped a baby dragon's wing in cloth and given her a name, and gotten up in the middle of the night to sit with her when she was scared. And Scale tried to understand what she was seeing. Daniel sat down too. Silver crawled back to his lap. Ember settled against Scale's foreleg. They sat in the morning quiet for a while. Two beings from opposite ends of the galaxy. Sitting together in the grass of a world the dragons had almost taken. Then Scale opened her communication channel to the Crimson Tide. "Roth," she said. "Report," he said. "Stand down," she said. "Full stand down. I'm recommending Earth be reclassified." A long pause. "Reclassified as what?" Scale looked at Daniel. He was gently scratching behind Silver's ear. The small dragon had her eyes closed. Her pale scales glowed softly in the morning light. She was making a sound like tiny, rumbling thunder, deep, contented, safe. "Protected," Scale said. She closed the channel. Roth would argue. The Conclave Council would question her judgment. There would be hearings and debates and formal reviews that would go on for decades. She knew all of that. She didn't care. Because sitting in that clearing on the most underestimated planet in the galaxy, she finally understood something that 10,000 years of conquest had never taught her. Strength was not about fire or armor or the size of your fleet. The most powerful force in the universe was the one thing the Conclave's entire civilization had never thought to study. The willingness to be gentle with something that could not defend itself. Humanity had no weapons that could threaten the Conclave. No army that could stand against a harvest fleet. no technology that could match 10,000 years of dragon advancement. But they had this quiet, unreasonable, completely inexplicable thing. And somehow, without knowing it, without trying, without even understanding, that the most powerful beings in the galaxy were watching from above. They had already won. Here is the part that the conclave debated for 100 years afterward. When Scale filed her mission report, she included one final observation that became the most discussed document in dragon history. She wrote, "We searched the galaxy for the weakest species. We measured strength by every standard we have used for 10,000 years. We were not wrong about the humans. By every metric we use, physical power, military capacity, biological defenses, lifespan, technological advancement, they are objectively the weakest species we have ever catalogued. But we made an error. We assumed that the weakest species would also be the least dangerous. We were wronged. The humans are the most dangerous species we have ever encountered, not because of what they can destroy, but because of what they can make you feel. They made our hatchlings feel safe. Then they made me feel something I have no word for in our language. Something between recognition and shame. I sat in the dirt of their world next to one of them, and I felt, for the first time, that the conclave might have been building the wrong kind of civilization for 10,000 years. A species that responds to a stranger's suffering with instinctive care, regardless of cost, regardless of species, regardless of reason. That is not a weak species. That is the only truly advanced species we have ever found." The report caused an argument in the conclave that lasted 3 generations. Some agreed with Scale. Some thought she had been compromised. Some thought she had simply spent too much time watching a man talk to a baby dragon in the morning light. But those who had watched the observation footage, who had seen Daniel, and Robbie, and Maya couldn't fully dismiss it. Because the truth was simple. The ancient dragon conclave had crossed the entire galaxy, looking for the weakest species they could find. And the weakest species had, without knowing it, without trying, without even understanding what was happening in the sky above them, reminded the most powerful civilization in the universe of something they had forgotten how to be. The loop is closed, and the opening was right all along. They came expecting to find nothing worth keeping. They found the one thing the galaxy had been missing. If this opened your eyes, keep watching. Let me bring this all together for you. The ancient dragon conclave had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They had conquered over 300 civilizations. They had systems and measurements and files and protocols for every situation they had ever encountered. And then they found Earth. They found a planet of soft, short-lived, unarmored creatures who had never left their own solar system. Creatures who had no idea that the rest of the galaxy existed. Creatures who ranked, by every dragon measurement ever created, as the weakest species ever catalogued. They came to that planet with a harvest fleet and a plan, and 10,000 years of certainty behind them. And 3 ordinary humans, a biologist in a Canadian forest, a fisherman on a Scottish dock, a teenager in Montana, undid all of it. Not with weapons, not with power, not with strategy or technology or defiance. With something far simpler, far older, far harder to measure. Just care, just the simple, stubborn, completely illogical human habit of looking at something small and frightened and alone, and deciding, without any reason, that you're going to take care of it. That is the truth at the heart of every great HFY story. And it's the truth at the heart of this one. You are not the biggest creature in the room. You are not the strongest. You will not live the longest. But you are capable of something that no other species has ever fully understood. And if you ever find yourself wondering whether that matters, remember Scale. Remember the most powerful being in the known galaxy, sitting in the grass of a quiet planet, watching a man scratch behind the ear of a baby dragon. Remember what she felt. And remember that she, with all her fire and all her scales and all her 10 centuries of life, didn't have a word for it. You do. Now, if this story moved you the way I think it did, hit the like button right now. It takes 1 second, and it tells me to keep making stories exactly like this one. If you're new here, welcome to HFY Sci-Fi. This channel is built for one purpose: the best humanity wins stories ever written. Stories that remind you exactly what humans are capable of when nobody is measuring. We drop a new story every single week. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. The next video is already coming, and I promise you it is even bigger than this one. We are talking about a story where humanity doesn't just surprise one species. We surprise the entire galaxy at once. Every warlord, every ancient council, every civilization that ever laughed at the little blue planet. You are not going to want to miss it. And before you go, I have one question for you. Drop your answer in the comments right now. Speech balloon: if you were Daniel, and you found silver and ember in that forest, what would you have done? Would you have called the authorities? Would you have run? Or would you have done exactly what he did, sat down in the grass, kept your hands open, and waited? Let me know. I read every single comment. And I'll see you in the next story. Because if the dragons have taught us anything today, it's that the universe is a far more interesting place when humanity shows up.